Hi, everyone. I'm glad you're here because today's episode is a doozy. Today, I have 3 stories that nearly shattered everyone involved as they tried to rationalize what happened to them. Just wait until you hear what you're about to hear. So if you're enjoying the channel, don't be invisible. Let us know you're out there and smash that subscribe button so we can always be together. Thanks. Now let's get into the stories. I'm looking to hear if any of your listeners are from the Appalachian Mountains. There's something out here that you have got to see to believe. I was walking through the woods with my boyfriend a few weeks ago, and he was doing that thing he does that I hate, which is walk so fast that I can barely keep up. Pet peeve of mine. Also, I was getting winded, and this was not what I was thinking when I had said I wanted us to go on a day hike. I was thinking a pleasant afternoon, kind of romantic, but he was turning it into a forced march, and I was getting frustrated. A few times I had to call out to him to wait up, and he just would stand there looking all impatient. Anyway, I was getting really ticked off, so I decided just to teach him a lesson. The trail was winding around, and he was getting further and further ahead of me, and when it rounded a corner, he just disappeared from sight, like he didn't even care that he was so far off in front. So I just thought, to hell with him, I'll give him some reason to worry, and then maybe he won't do it again. So I went off trail. Now, I'm not stupid, I know you can get lost easily, but I was irritated and I was wanting to prove a point. The whole time I'm doing this, I'm keeping my ears peeled, thinking I'll hear him start calling my name any minute. I walked for like 10 minutes, trying not to go too far from the trail. I just kind of walked parallel to it. Also, as I'm writing this, I'm seeing this whole thing in a new light, and boy, do I sound dumb. Like one of those girls in a horror movie who you know is going to get targeted by the killer. So then I had to stop and pee, so I went behind a big tree, even though I wasn't visible to the trail, but habit, I guess. While I was squatting there, I heard this rustling up above me, and at first I thought it was just squirrels or something, but then I had this weird feeling like somebody was watching me. It freaked me out, especially because I was in this vulnerable position. And so I quickly got my pants pulled up and I started walking again, and I kept looking behind me, thinking somebody was following me. Just a weird feeling, but my body must have known something because the hair on my arms was standing up. At first I told myself I had imagined it, and then I started wondering if it was just my boyfriend and that maybe he was going to jump out at me and teach me a lesson. I hate that, by the way, when somebody scares you for a laugh. I stopped at one point and I talked into the woods behind me saying, "Okay, Brian, I hear you." And then I waited, but he didn't come out. The longer I looked at the woods behind me, the more uneasy I was getting. So I started walking again. I was really disappointed that I wasn't hearing Brian yelling my name. I mean, did he not even notice that I was gone? Or did he just not care? My brain was taking me in all the directions. I then stopped to listen again, thinking he had gotten far away, when I heard this noise above me. A crackling of branches and leaves swishing, that kind of a sound. I got a little nervous because it sounded too big to be squirrels or anything else that you would normally find in a tree. It sounded big, and I had just decided to turn around and start reversing my path back to the main trail when I heard a cough, a human cough. No mistaking it, but it came from above. I looked up into the branches of this big oak tree, one of those ancient ones, and at first I didn't see anything, but all of a sudden I saw movement, and I saw him, at least parts of him. It was a man, but he looked odd, like really hairy. Now, I'm not talking about Bigfoot kind of hairy. This was just a really hairy guy with an overgrown beard and long, shaggy hair. The skin on his face looked similar to a dark tan, I guess, with facial hair covering most of it. It was the fact that he was up in a tree, way off the trail watching me, that completely freaked me out. I looked up at him and I yelled, "Stay away!" I was thinking that this was the creep that had watched me pee a few minutes ago when I heard that noise. But that didn't really make sense because that incident had happened about 20 yards back. And I don't think people can move from tree to tree like monkeys like that. Right after I yelled, the guy jumped down to a lower limb like he was coming for me. His eyes were focused on me, and he didn't even need to be careful or look around as he came down. No, all eyes were on me. I lost my cool and I just ran like hell back in the direction that I had come. I was frantic, trying to run as fast as I could, but I had to swerve quickly a few times when I realized that I had taken the wrong way. Next, I heard a thud behind me, and I started praying, but a second later, the guy grabbed me from behind, one arm in a headlock and his other arm around my shoulders and chest. I started screaming my head off and I grabbed at his arm, scratching and trying to pull him off of me. His arm was weird looking, and that frightened me even more than I had already been. He was super muscular and he had this really dry skin on his hands, but it was all wrinkled like a raisin. His arm was hairy all the way down to his wrist, too. I didn't turn around to see his face, but I have to tell you, he had the worst smell of any living creature that I have ever experienced. I'm screaming my head off and he's trying to drag me over to a tree, and he's winning. Suddenly I hear my boyfriend, thank God. He was calling my name frantically. He sounded pretty close, but he couldn't see me, and that's when the hairy man let me go. I yelled, "Here!" and I swung around, trying to see where Brian was. I then watched as the man just leapt up into the tree, almost running straight up the trunk. It was supernatural almost, super fast, looking like he did it all the time. But I wasted no time running towards Brian's voice, and I didn't stick around to see where the guy went. Brian was there in a clearing, and I ran straight into his arms, shaking like crazy. I blubbered out my whole story, and he held me. I was shaking so hard. Once he understood what I was telling him, he got all tense, looked around like he wanted to find that guy. But I begged him for us to just leave, and he finally said okay, but he made us stop at the local police department to report it. They acted like I was a wacko when I told them that the guy was in the trees out there. But they took my report, and then we just went home. Okay, so all of you out there, what the hell was this thing? I'm telling you, it was not a creature like Bigfoot. It was definitely a man, but a man who climbed the trees like a monkey. Command told me it was a training accident, but I'm not so sure. Something weird happened during our final field training exercise. I mean, really weird. Not just the usual, did I see what I thought I saw because I've been sleep deprived for 15 weeks kind of weird. I'm an Army combat medic, which means that after completing basic training, I opted to train more so that I could become a medical specialist. Combat medic training is 4 straight months of 16 to 20-hour days, constantly working, learning how to save the lives of my battle buddies and not how to become a casualty myself. I'd made it through to the final, which put me at Joint Base San Antonio for the field training exercise. It's basically the 8-day final exam from hell, where we go through everything we might be expected to come across while we're on duty. My squad was doing the dismounted patrol, which is exactly what it sounds like. Soldiers walking patrol, ready for action. It was hard. It's meant to be hard. But when I was in the middle of it, all I could focus on was making it through. We were walking our route, moving single file through heavy brush. Not a lot of visibility, plenty of things that crunch underfoot while you walk. It was basically a live training sim. We had weapons, but no real ammunition, our full kit, and we had standard combat objectives to accomplish. We all knew that at some point we would find another patrol. One of the situations we had to deal with was finding casualties, which we would have to assess, treat, and medevac. It wasn't anything we hadn't been through already. We'd all just been through basic training. We were all stressed beyond belief, but we were soldiers, we were medics, and we were all determined to make it through this together. We'd been walking the patrol route for a while when we found the ambush. Soldiers were lying scattered around a clearing, some in cover and some in the open. Some of them were groaning in pain, others weren't making any noise. TV medics will rush forward to help the wounded before securing the area. Combat medics aren't that dumb. We deployed to secure the area, and that's when the bad guys showed back up. Knowing that the bad guys were actually our own instructors, it didn't make it feel any less stressful. At that point, I'm pretty sure seeing a fluffy bunny would have sent me, at least, into overdrive. Our squad took casualties as we suppressed the threat, which gave us additional patience. We started triage, followed the protocol for assessing which patients could be treated first or had to be treated first. Soldiers with small cuts weren't the priority. The patient who took a round to the leg and was bleeding from a femoral artery was. So nothing I've described so far was weird. It was all what we had been led to understand would be happening. Dismounted patrol, find wounded, care for them, achieve the tactical objective while dealing with casualties. But this was where it got strange. My partner and I were working on our patient who had a simulated gunshot wound to the thoracic cavity. We were working through the March protocol. We all knew it in our sleep at this point. Massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia. We were behind some heavy cover while the security detail did their job and kept us clear from bad guys. We were shouting to each other, trying to get our patients to talk to us. Maybe that's why we didn't hear anything. Someone shouted, and we froze. It was like a yell like we had never heard before. I'd heard soldiers who got wounded during basic. Accidents happen, but this sounded different. My partner and I looked at each other as we worked on our patient. I could see the look on his face. We worked on autopilot to stabilize our wounded, but I think we were both wondering the same thing. Was there a second wounded patrol we were supposed to find? When we finished, we filled out the patient's paperwork, tagged it on his belt, and got ready for evacuation. That's when Staff Sergeant Meadows came running over. He told us to form up and come with him. When your sergeant tells you to do something, you do it. My partner and I handed over our patient and we grabbed our rifles and we followed him into the brush at a run. We saw the bushes before we saw the body, but Staff Sergeant Meadows skidded to a halt and motioned for us to hold while he secured the area. That's when I noticed that his rifle didn't have an orange-painted dummy clip. He had live ammunition. At that point, I knew something was wrong. But like I said, I was in combat medic mode and I was following protocol because that's what you do to stay alive. I waited until Staff Sergeant waved us forward, and once he did, my battle buddy and I darted forward to the casualty. Actually seeing someone wounded is beyond stressful. I knew I'd been training for this. I knew this was what I wanted, but it felt so different. This was a real patient with real injuries. We could smell the blood when we rolled the body over. We did everything we were trained to do, snapped on gloves, did the blood sweep, tried to get the soldier to talk so we'd know if his airway was compromised. I didn't think it was because the claw marks on his face didn't reach his throat. But you still have to check because things can change ridiculously fast, especially in the field. Besides the face, there were defensive wounds on his forearms. Thorax seemed okay, and we didn't need to intubate. I was in the kind of haze where I knew exactly what to do, exactly what to use to help. My partner and I had been working together so much that we moved like one unit. Assess, triage, treat, tourniquet the arm, pack the gashes with hemostatic material. What did this to him? It was a question I didn't really ask myself until later. Plenty of stuff had claws out there. Mountain lions? I didn't think there were wolves or bears, but that didn't mean something hadn't wandered through. You don't focus on speculation, though. But it wasn't a speculation making the dry brush on the ground crack. There was something out there. Sergeant's rifle was immediately pointed in the direction of the sound. He motioned for us to finish, fast. There was no way a single security point could hold this position safely, even if we were under cover while we worked. Bushes are great for concealing, not for providing anything that will stop a bullet. We were good. We were fast. We started packing the wounded onto a stretcher, and I finally realized that he was one of our other instructors. What had he been doing out here alone? Sergeant yelled for us to get down, and something erupted from the bushes. I say something because I only saw a gray and tan blur before I was on my face in the dirt, covering my patient and clutching my useless rifle. Sergeant screamed. There was a sound like, I don't know, ripping fabric? That sound that a knife makes when it's cutting through raw steak? Then there was an incredible smell of blood, too thick to just be from new wounds. It smelled old, and there was this awful stink of urine. I could have explained all of that away, but I could not explain the growl. It was low, deep, high up. Whatever this thing was, it was not a mountain lion. The dry ground crunched under its weight as it turned, and the growling sounded like it was pointed in our direction. I was not ashamed to admit that I started praying. My battle buddy was doing a little more than that. He'd been fiddling with his two-way radio, and he set it to make that horrible ultrasonic screech that electronics make when you've royally screwed them up. That noise felt like someone took an ice pick to my temple. I can't imagine how that thing felt, but it wasn't good. It yelped and it whined, and it almost sounded like a dog, and then the stink was gone. My buddy kept the noise going while we scrambled over to Sergeant Meadows. We went into medic mode again, going through the protocol. He had gashes to the chest and had been thrown across the clearing. Very different treatment. We did our best. I won't go through the details of the medevac. Both Sarge and our other patients survived. Our class all passed the test, and my battle buddy and I got the highest marks. But nobody, including our 2 wounded, talked about what happened. The official statement was that cougars had been sighted on base, and that one had attacked an instructor who'd been setting up for our class's dismounted patrol. I know I was functioning on adrenaline and sleep deprivation, but I know that whatever we encountered was no cougar. What it was is something I'm less sure of, and whether it's still out there, that I'm even less sure of. Some cities and states get all the attention. Something strange happens in New York or Florida, and it's viral on social media within the hour. Strange things happen in the Ozarks, though, and nobody seems to care. I live in Benton County, Arkansas. Plenty of strange things have happened here, but only one strange thing has happened to me. That's what I want to talk about. I should confess something up front, I guess. I like the strange. When I hear something odd or unexplainable has happened, I run in that direction. I like the mystery, I think. I always wanted to feel like I was a part of something special, and special somethings didn't come often, though, to Benton County. Until 2016, that is. 2 years prior, someone reportedly saw a strange creature wandering through the edge of the Ozark National Forest. It became my fixation. No one could prove that the man hadn't seen what he claimed, and I wanted to see it too. I made myself like hiking. I went out every day that I could, and I walked the longest and the least popular trails. I just wanted to catch a glimpse of that thing. I wanted to be a part of that story. I was an idiot. A few people took notice of my repeat visits. National Park Service, I guess. I don't blame them for keeping an eye on me. I do blame them for what ended up happening, though. They made me the latest in a long list of Benton County idiots. As I was saying, it was 2016, and I was on one of my usual hikes. I didn't notice anyone following me that day. I thought the rangers had gotten bored by then. I spotted something on the trail ahead of me. A small, gray, furry shape that didn't immediately resemble a fox or a rabbit. I was worried that it might be a little mountain lion cub. I've seen mother lions chase people off the trails, and I didn't want that to be the story I ended up with. But what if the cub wasn't a lion, I thought? What if it was actually the creature that I was looking for? I moved closer. When my feet shifted on the ground, the small animal saw me. It turned and it pointed its flat, feline nose in my direction. Right away, I saw the 2 horn-like stumps growing from the top of its head. The little thing opened its mouth and made a pitiful mewing sound, sort of like a baby whining after a long nap. It made me smile. It wasn't what I'd been looking for, but it was certainly interesting, and weird too. And then something screamed from the tree line to my left. It screamed how a human woman might scream. How a human woman might scream if she was afraid for her life. I felt every bone in my body grow cold right that very moment. When I turned to look, I could only vaguely decipher the shape of the mother creature from its place in the shadows of the Ozarks. It looked like a big cat. Maybe a lion wasn't so far off. Its face was flat, and 2 antlers protruded from its head. Its tail looked naked too, maybe like a rat's. Maybe it had mange. I wasn't sure then, and I'm not sure now. All I'm sure is that when the beast opened its mouth, it cried in a way that only people should cry. It shrieked at me. It shrilled as it urged me away. I should have ran. I'd gone looking for this thing, right? And I know running is the last thing you want to do when you're caught by a mother defending her young. But I ran anyway, fighting or freezing or backing away slowly. None of that even occurred to me. I ran and I could hear it run behind me. It screamed while it chased me. It screamed so loud that I thought my ears might bleed. There was no telling how close it was either, not with a scream like that. Suddenly I wasn't alone on the trail. I was running past 2 park rangers. There were more following behind them. I kept running. Only after half a dozen rangers passed by me did I even consider that the monster was no longer behind me. The 3 gunshots that erupted behind me forced me to hit the ground. I landed on my knees and my hands. I felt like my heart and lungs were exploding. When they didn't, I looked up. Some of the rangers were already running back down the trail, shaking their heads and complaining about the run. I asked in disbelief, hadn't they seen it? No, they said. There was nothing there besides my screaming, they told me. Why was the gun fired? I asked. What gun? Even the ranger who emerged from the top of the trail with scuffs on his palms to his elbows insisted that they had not seen anything in the woods. They didn't see or hear anything chasing me down that trail. I had never been so mad. When I got back to town, I told anyone who would listen. I told them what I had seen and how the Park Service had reacted. The Park Service, of course, spun a yarn to make me look like the imbecile. They told my friends that I was found dehydrated in the woods, that I had been drinking, and I got turned around. The sun had scrambled my head, made me hallucinate. What choice did my friends have except to believe them? They all knew how desperate I was to be a part of a strange adventure. It didn't seem unreasonable to think that my mind invented a story when my body couldn't find one. But I know the truth. I know what I saw and what they saw and what they had to do in order to protect themselves. I know there's something deadly in the Ozarks. Next time, I'm going to take its picture.